Hey folks, Jack Spirko here. This video is really for a core group of guys that I put together to kind of pitch the idea and make sure that my proposal is clear. This is going to be for, I guess you can kind of think of it as a podcasting supergroup. So it's really for 5 people right now. I guess 4 and 5 including me. But I'm putting it out publicly instead of privately because I like the idea of open source on how things happen. And if this project takes off and becomes, some version of what I think it'd be good for people to see the back end, how it actually becomes what it becomes. And before I go into the project itself, I just want to say something to anybody watching as a spectator, so to say, any of the potential members of this project that I have already reached out to, and any potential members that are reached out to by this group, because I'm going to kind of pull back here and say, you guys go, like, you guys know people too. I don't want to be in total control of that, and that's kind of the lead point. I built my show over the years to about 250,000 listeners, and I've had a lot of success with my podcast being Jack Spirko's podcast with my community. And over the years, I have tried to build sub-communities to varying degrees. Every single one that I've been successful with has followed a pattern. I get it up, I get it going, and I may still be part of it, but I am not in charge. I do not control it. It goes into an organic mode where it controls itself. And I've learned how to do this because years and years ago, in the earlier days of the internet, when I was a consultant to a lot of companies, they all wanted to go viral, go viral, go viral, man. Can you make us go viral? Like, first of all, you don't understand viral if you're asking if I can make you go viral. But there was always a conflict that made it impossible for me to ever do for them what they actually were paying me to do for them. And that is they wanted to maintain total control. So you want to put out this thing and you want it to go viral and be organic and grow, but you want to have complete control over it. So what you're telling me is I want to do a monocropped cornfield, but I want it to be all organic, but I want to control every single aspect of it. And anybody with half a brain would say you can't do that. And things like this, any kind of movement kind of works the same way. So it's really important to me that, and I think the guys that I'm talking to right now understand that, but it's important that the audience kind of understand this too. This thing needs to run where if Jack Spirko one day decides I'm not going to do this anymore and I leave, it doesn't stop. Or if Vin Armani decides I don't have time, I love this thing, but I don't have time to do this, and walks away, it doesn't stop. And any kind of a technical person that we have in it that actually does the mechanics of let's take this raw file and let's put it on these places. If they go away, there's money to pay them. So if they go away, it doesn't matter. We probably need 2 of them, and I'll get into that in a second. So if one of them can't show up today, the other one can show up, right? And so I want this thing to have its own legs, its own life. I'm willing to provide the hosting for it, but even if I end up not part of it, I would just let you guys keep using them. I have 2 dedicated servers, and if the big thing would be, well, we want Jack out because y'all decide you don't like me anymore, just move it. It's a freaking WordPress blog. There's actually a plugin that actually does all the work for you, so it's not that hard to move a blog with some posts and some files attached to it. So I want this to have its own thing. Okay, so let's talk about what the goal of this is. This is all, and many props to Curtis Stone. Without you, I would have never even thought to do this. But Curtis Stone did a video last week. He challenged myself and quite a few other people, mostly in the kind of regenerative ag permaculture space, to talk about solutions to big problems. And I thought that was a fantastic thing. And I knew some of the people that were called out in that and others I didn't know. And some of them were people that are very well known, and some of them are just people that are just going on with life and getting things done. But I started thinking about that, and I started thinking about the problems that we have in our society right now that are really coming to a head, and all of the turmoil that we're going through, and all of the fighting, and everything's political. Here's an example of how things can be so political, and so quickly political, even when they're not political. Last week, somebody put out a funny meme. It was great. It had Greta, the little doom goblin girl, how dare you girl, and it had the orange man in it, the Trump, right? And, he's standing there talking, and she's all pissed off in the background looking at him. And somebody took that picture, and they made a completely non-political meme that was genuinely funny. And Trump was the bartender talking, and me sitting here waiting with an empty-ass beer. So I put that out, and I said, guys, look, if somebody can take this picture and make something non-political that's genuinely funny out of it, you guys can have better conversations with each other. It took somebody 5 freaking seconds to turn the non-political into political. And we cannot solve the problems of the world with tribalism going on at the political level. We can't. Because, like I said in my video that preceded this one, every single thing that people in power do is dedicated to division, and the more evenly they can divide, the more effective that it is. And so the government is not going to fix anything because it doesn't benefit the government to fix things. It benefits the government because the government, by its very nature, think of it like an organism. It wants control and it wants growth. It has to have those two things. That's every government bureaucrat's agenda, is to make their department bigger, to move up the chain, and to have more control. And you're judged not on what you accomplish, but how many people there are under you. That's the truth of every government organization, every bureaucracy, every single one of them. So that system in of itself cannot fix problems. And this is not a case that there's no use for a government, no use for a state. In the words of Vin Armani, every system of government that's ever existed works for somebody, right? So what I want to do, though, is go a little bit higher. Yes, when we get on and we talk about how to feed the world, I want Curtis Stone to talk about growing food in your backyard, growing food and selling it to your neighbor. I want to talk about how I've taken 3 acres that's basically a rock and turned it into this uber productive thing. I want to talk about projects that I did with Mark Shepard. I want to talk about things like that. I want to talk about the work of Jet Lawton, greening the desert. I want to talk about what Neil Spackman did in the desert in Saudi Arabia. Like, all of those things, I want to talk about that. But think of it like the thing that attracts the viewer, but what I actually want to teach the viewer here, because I've been teaching solutions for 12 years, and I've been highly encouraged at the number of people that have implemented them. But all that is me saying, hey, here's something you can do, and people go doing it. It's powerful. But do you know what is more powerful? More powerful is when people watch on the occasions that Vin Armani and I disagree on something, and they watch us debate it with respect for each other, and they watch us reach a conclusion where usually one of us actually moves a little more toward the other one's side, and we have total fucking respect for each other during the entire conversation, and both of us learn things from each other. That is what I want this to be. I don't want this to be every subject we bring only the members of the panel that already agree on that subject and are experts on that panel. I want somebody who doesn't know that much about regenerative agriculture on this panel, like Pete Quinones or Vin Armani. I want them sitting back listening and then going, hey, what about? And I want us to think we know more going, wait a minute, let's hear that. I want to have kind of a rule that when somebody's talking, right, we'll have some sort of a host for this thing or whatever, and like if I want to say something, I don't cut that person off. Basically, some of these conference offers have the thing to manually put your hand up, and then that person concludes their thought so that it's complete before I critique it. And when I critique it, I don't need to critique it from the standpoint of that won't work. I need to critique it from the standpoint of, well, if that, then this. See, this is how you have a conversation that moves the conversation forward toward a consensus. And the reason that's so important is consensus is what your government doesn't want. Consensus is what your government doesn't want. They do not want the American people to largely agree on anything, and they certainly don't want us to agree on how to do that thing. But the reality is, as human beings, we all want the same thing. We all want the same things in our life. We want freedom, real freedom. A lot of times people are afraid of it because they've never actually experienced it, but when it comes down to it, once people understand freedom, it's what they want. And that means they want to be able to pursue their dreams their way. But while they're doing that, they don't want to feel that somebody can come take it from them, so they want security. If they become sick, they want assurance that they can get treatment without it destroying everything else that they've built. There's nothing wrong with wanting any of those things, and most people, if you take the sociopaths and the psychopaths out of the equation, almost everybody wants those things. I could go 100 more things, but then the video will get too long, right? But they want those things in their life. And the discussion then needs to be, how do we do this instead of you're a libtard or you're an orange god worshipping idiot, right? We need to have these, and so what we need to do is get together, and we need to have these conversations so that the audience maybe goes, you know what, all their solutions are interesting, but I have a better idea. But then that person knows how to put a group together and initiate a conversation that becomes group-led instead of led by them. Because that's what I want. I want this to be a group-led initiative. So even though I'm doing this kind of startup, I'm pushing all of these guys together and saying, go grab some more and put it on the fire, and then let's throw some gas on it and get it burning. As soon as it's burning, I want to go, I am one of the guys. And the sooner I can get there, the better. I'm just kind of laying out a vision, and let's get that vision rolling, and then whatever it becomes, I will let go. And that's something else I want to teach people, how to propose something. And when it starts to take shape, if it doesn't look exactly like you would have done it, you might want to let go, because when we bring the collective thought process to it and everybody's working to the same goal, you can end up with 20 solutions out of one idea, and each one of those solutions is best suited to some other place. So let's talk about the format. Again, I want this to be not based on any one of us. This is not the Jack Spirko show, the Vin Armani show, the Pete Quinones show, the John Bush show, right? The Curtis Stone show, right? It's not that. And I don't even know what we call it yet. Love to have some ideas on what we call it, but this is about individual insurrection through group action, I guess is the best way I can kind of put it at this point in my crazy freaking head. But we have to set this up so any single member of this panel, and I'm seeing 12 in my head is where to start. I don't know why. Maybe it's patterns or whatever, but like 12 seems like a good number to where even if 2/3 don't show up on any given show, there's still a quorum of 4. And sure, there's people in the audience that will show up for Vin and not for me, and will show up for me and not for Vin. But if we do our part, we're going to get broad exposure to everybody, and we're going to broaden the viewpoint of all of our audiences together. We'll do 1 to 2 shows a week, I think is the way to go. I know that anything less than 1 show a week, you might as well not do it. I'm a professional podcaster. I make enough money to fund my entire life, but I do that because I do 5 shows a week. The most valuable thing that people in this world have today is their time. You can put out too much content, but you can also put out too little. If they don't know they can depend on you to be there, you can't depend on them to be there. I think 2 makes a lot of sense, and it may be, we'll have to discuss this as a group as we coalesce the group together. I don't know about you guys. It would be easier for me to show up one night and do 2 to 3 hours and split that into 2 shows than it would be to show up for 2 1.5 hour shows. So I think with this many people, we can get so much gold content. We can just pick a point. We've run long enough. We're just going to, hey, we're going to cut it there and kick out the next episode on Thursday or whatever. And that actually might really lead people to listen more. And there's a big reason for this, and it's where I'm starting to pare down the length of my own show a little bit here, because what I've noticed is if there's a 3-hour movie, I won't watch it. But if there's a series that I really like, and it's in 40-minute increments, I'll sit there and watch it for 5 freaking hours. And there's just something about having kind of a stop point and wanting more that's not there and being able to go on that keeps people's interest. So that would be my thought there. So that's the frequency. We'll publish it to some sort of standard feed. So we'll set up a blog, throw the file up there, show notes, brief description of the show. And so it has a standalone site. It has nothing to do with any individual of us. Take all the members of the panel. We write a quick bio. Here's who we are. Here's what we're about. Here's all the people. Here's their other projects. So that's your publicity side. That's static in one place on a website. We probably also need to make sure that if we do this with some kind of conferencing program, everything goes video now. We're probably better off doing it in video. Push it out as audio and video. Throw it on YouTube. Any other video sites. Any sites that any of you guys think make sense. We need to have this tech person kind of, when they're done, they package it and distribute it. And then we go up and we take it from there, so that our lives are pretty easy. The producer host position needs to be a paid position. That means if we're going to be part of this, anybody that's part of this needs to pony up some money. I don't think it has to be a lot of money. If there's 12 people and we all pony up $25, what's that, like $300? Like, we should be able to get to do 4 things a week broken in half. We should be able to get somebody good to do that for that money. I mean, if they're good at what they do, they're just kind of hanging out while we're talking and maybe running the back end a little bit and bringing people in. And the reason it needs to be enough money to pay somebody for their time is, one, we all say we believe in that, so we better do what the hell we believe. But the bigger reason is, if that person goes away, it needs to be as easy as this is available, and somebody out there in the free market goes, I want to do that. Because, again, that pushes sustainability of the effort. Non-commercial. I don't see us ever having to fight about inbound revenue and who gets how much, because I don't think we need that. For me, being on the air with Curtis Stone and freaking Vin Armani and John Bush and whoever else we bring in, Curtis Stone, etc., a couple times a month, and having access to their audiences and being associated with them, that's more than enough for me to pay friggin' $50 a month. I wouldn't even, if we get together as a group and decide, hey, this is all the shit we want done and this is how much it's going to cost, and it costs me $50, that fast, right? So, I mean, we don't need to be revenue generating off of this. All of us have our own things, and everything we funnel to ourselves, we have our own way we monetize that, and we get a broader reach. So, I'm totally happy to share my audience of 250,000 people with everybody in this. Your audience doesn't have to be as big as mine. I just want equal effort from everybody that's involved. I think that's totally fair. And here's kind of the producer host qualifications. I think they would have to have very basic audio video editing capabilities. If nothing else, just to break it in half. I don't think we need a lot of sound effects and crap like that. In fact, the more down and dirty gorilla this thing is, probably the better. It shouldn't look like something that would be on the TV, the boob tube. It should look like something like a bunch of guys that just bust their ass every day are taking extra time every week to do something to better humanity. Because that's what the fuck it is, right? So that's what it should fucking look like. It shouldn't look like this high-polished, high-production value, multiple, camera angles on every single person with the lighting perfect and shit. It should be, look, man, Vin calling in from Saipan going, it's freaking early or late here because of the time differential. I'm doing this shit anyway, and this is what I think today. Because that's genuine, and people are so fucking done with polished bullshit that has no substance. They will turn away from the most polished thing with zero substance. And trust me, guys, I started my show in a freaking car with a headset, on my head, a little, like this, driving down with an MP3 recorder in my lap, and I built it to what I did because people cared about the substance. So I want this to be substance over anything. And if we can make it a little more polished or whatever, fine, but we don't let that get in the way. Like, if we're going to spend I'll tell you right now, if we're going to spend 3 weeks trying to figure out how we make a certain graphic come in, I don't even want to fucking do it, right? Because that's not my goal. And if you guys decide you want to do that, do it without me. I won't be pissed or nothing. I won't be ass hurt. But I mean, that's my goal is let's make this so that, Curtis can come this week. So Curtis shows up. Curtis says his piece. Curtis goes on with life, and he has a few obligations we'll talk about in a second after that episode's published. Or even if he doesn't show up, he has some obligations. But otherwise, the time you're dedicating is the time you're dedicating, and the rest of it, you go back to doing what you do and be the example that you are, and let all these examples come together frequently to show what that can do, the power of doing that. The host needs to be able to run a conference program. That's not that hard. Xavier said he's been using Discord due to security issues with Zoom. I'm not sure what he means by that. We'll discuss that back end. This is my view on security. If you're worried about people listening to something that you're going to publish publicly, I don't get it, right? So we're going to put this out on an iTunes feed. We're going to put this out live. We're going to put it on YouTube. We're going to put it on Facebook. But gee, somebody might listen to it while we're doing it. No, I'm not worried about it. If there's some sort of security hole where they can get into people's computers and stuff, then yeah, we need to use a more secure platform. So we'll handle that back end with ourselves. And the person who does the host duty needs to be able to handle putting it out on social media. I think this thing, whatever we call it, should have its own Twitter account, its own Facebook account, its own MeWe account, its own YouTube account, etc. And we can duplicate that in ours, and we should. But once we hang up, I'm out for the night, and I'm going to go back to taking care of my wife, which I'm now taking more time away from to do this. I don't have to do shit, and neither do you. That's what we're paying somebody to do it. So they have to have the ability, which I don't know. I don't think anybody would even stick their hand up if they couldn't do those 3 things. Right? And if they did, then we would not hire them, or we would quickly figure it out and fire them. Additional panel members. I want to know from my core that I've started this with, who do you think would be good? I do think we need more in the permaculture space. I got a lot of guys that are just the hardcore anarcho-libertarian agorist space here now, but we do have some exposure to it with, John Bush has done a lot with that side of things. Curtis is right in that, so maybe a little more of that, but maybe some more monetary thought, folks. And you guys know, so you guys that are in the core group, we'll handle that back channel. You guys looking at this video from the outside, so to say, tell us who you think that we should approach. Because I think with this group of guys, we can approach just about anybody, and if they're willing to do something like this, we can at least get the proposal to them. No problem. I think we need, again, more diversity But I don't mean that the way that a lot of the SJW types do. I don't really care what somebody's race is or their sex is or their religion is. To me, that's not diversity. Diversity of knowledge is what I'm most concerned about. I need competence and competence in specific areas of expertise. I'm kind of a generalist. The people we have now are somewhat generalist, but most of them are specific to a certain area. They have the greater expertise. We need more of that. That said, I do think it would be great to have some females on this group, because there is a difference between the sexes in perspective. And if you're going to reach people, you have to have conversations. So as much diversity as we can get as far as ethnicity, race, gender, and all would be great. But I don't want to be stupid and go out and try to drag somebody in that doesn't really want to be part of it just because we need one of these type things. That's stupid. And this is supposed to be an example of how to do things in an intelligent way. So we can't be stupid about it. I'm not trying to please anybody here. I'm trying to make something happen. So the people that show up and want to participate, that are willing to commit to what we're doing, those are the ones we'll run with. Procedure. We'll set a standard time of day, and all of our members will RSVP somehow, like, I'll be there at this one. So we'll know who's going to be there. That way we can promote that the day of. Tonight we'll have Curtis and Vin and, John Bush or whatever. And we'll be talking about XYZ. Right? So at least a day in advance, maybe 2 for the RSVP on that. And that actually probably, like I said, I think the best thing to do is for that to create 2 episodes, somewhere between an hour to 90 minutes apiece. And then we got 2 for a week, and we're done for a week. We do that 4 times a month. If everybody shows up for 2, we're golden. We're golden at that point with what we're doing. Show up, participate, go on with life. And again, what I want to do is have that show be on 1 or 2 big issues. Let's say the education system, or let's say the legal system, or let's say feeding ourselves, or let's say taking care of ourselves medically, or whatever. And then we just kind of have like some rough idea what we're going to talk about, and we go from there. And when there's a discrepancy, we hammer out the discrepancy to the best of our ability. And if we come to a point where 2 people totally disagree, we get to a point where we're both able to say, "This, I've heard you. This is why I feel the way that I do. I understand why you feel the way that you do, and I'm okay with that. And here's the things we agree on, and here's the things that we both think might be able to be done." And again, that's an adult conversation. It's sad that people like us have to come together and go, hey, America, hey, world, this is how you have a fucking adult conversation in 2020, but I think we do. And I think we can make a real difference with this, because we've all made differences on our own already. Together, I think we'll have more power, and this is the next step. We have so many people taking action. Being able to spread that action so that others will take it. That's the gift that, honestly, everybody that we've kind of put together so far has. That we can communicate in such a way that people are like, I want to try that. And I might get on the air and I might say 10 things this week to do, and you might think I'm nuts 9 of those times. But I'm doing it well enough that you'll show up, you'll hear the 10th one and go, that I agree with. That I can do. Now, if I can take that person and not just have them taking action, because now they're taking action, they have an example of what they did. They can say it works because here it is. If they can then communicate with people, and when somebody says, well, you're wrong or whatever, instead of getting all pissed off and calling them a libtard or some name or some shit, they can say, well, let's have a conversation about this. And they can have a genuine conversation. I want to model that behavior for people because clearly we need to. Our obligations as panel members. Number 1, provide funding. That's such a small amount that anybody that wouldn't do it probably doesn't really want to do it anyway. Promote the show. So every episode, I will, and I expect everybody else to do this, I will put it out on all my social media. I run a daily email. I will put that episode corresponding to that next daily email in my daily email. I will mention the show on the air, a few times at least each week in general. And when it's on social media, any social media I use, our tech person, our producer, MC, whatever, will put it out on our channel, and I will share it in every way that I can on what I use. I don't expect Vin to go sharing it on Facebook because he doesn't use Facebook. I do expect him to share it on Twitter because he uses Twitter. And Pete uses Twitter and Facebook, so I would expect that he would share it in both places. And that's and show up at least twice a month. Show up at least twice a month, unless you're on vacation or something, which, guys, I'm about to take a really long one right at the initial setup of this. But, other than some extended departure, that if you're going to be an ongoing part of it, that you show up and be respectful of each other. And from there, I want to let go. I really, like, my goal is to do what I did, like, with the Zello channel that we set up for TSP. I set it up, I got it running, I got the hell out of the way and let people that wanted to run it. Our nonprofit, Citizens Assisting Citizens, same thing. You know, got it set up, got it running, let it go. And I've found that the more I let go, the better it will do. And that's how I think this needs to be. We're participants rather than controllers. And I also want to teach people leadership for a time. So I'm good at this. So I'm leading this part. I know that we'll get into places where there'll come a time where we'll all look and go, just kind of, it'll happen organically. Everybody looks at Vin. Like, we know this is your wheelhouse. And Vin steps up and leads for a time. And when Vin's time has, ended, he doesn't try to control it. He steps back, actually grateful for the ability to step back, because leadership's a burden. Leadership's a sacrifice. The only way leadership's not a burden and a sacrifice is if your leadership actually means control. And none of us want to fucking control people. And that's another thing we need to model, because all the ideals that we share in common about liberty and freedom and the right of self-determination and the right to be left the fuck alone, which is the most fundamental right we have, requires that leadership be given when it's necessary to those who are most suited to lead, and that it be walked away from at time with the minute that changes. And that takes a dedication and a desire to help your fellow man versus a dedication and a desire to control your fellow man. So that's what this is all about. Every one of y'all told me you were in, so I'd like to know where we go from here. We could take that back channel from here, but I'm also okay with any of you taking any thoughts you have and putting it out publicly like this for everybody. I want to be as open about how we're doing this and why we're doing this as possible, because if it works out the way I think it will, it'll make a great story someday when somebody says, blah, blah, blah. Well, here you go. And that's one of the things I love, and I'm sure many of you do as well, about doing podcasts, video, blogging, social media. When people say, no, you didn't, you go, well, actually, here you go. Here you go. Because facts don't have feelings, guys. We all know that. That's something America, the world needs to learn. Facts don't have feelings. And that means that we should be able to discuss facts without getting emotional about them. Look forward to hearing from all of you with your thoughts on where we go from here.